early 2026, the FBI issued a warning. Iranian drones may be targeting infrastructure on American soil off the California coast. Not a future scenario, a current advisory. Meanwhile, the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow channel through which 20% of the world's oil passes, is effectively closed. Iranian drone attacks have struck Gulf ports, oil facilities, and at least one desalination plant in Bahrain in recent days. And in Ukraine, a war now entering its fourth year has been shaped more than almost any other factor by a single weapon system that costs less than a family car. The Shahed drone. This is not a video about one conflict. It is a video about how a $30,000 piece of Iranian engineering has rewritten the rules of modern warfare, and why the consequences are now being felt far beyond any battlefield. The Shahed 136 is not a marvel of engineering. That is, in a sense, the point. It is an autonomous propeller-driven drone, sometimes called a loitering munition, sometimes a kamikaze drone that flies to a target and detonates on impact. It is guided by GPS. It has a range of up to 2,000 kilometers. It carries a 40-kilogram warhead. And it can be launched from the back of a truck. It flies at roughly 180 kilometers per hour, slow enough that radar systems can detect it, but fast enough that interception requires a real response. The manufacturing cost sits somewhere between $20,000 and $50,000 US per unit, though, as we will examine shortly, the price Iran charged Russia for early deliveries was considerably higher. What makes the Shahed significant is not what it can do. It is what it costs to stop it. In September 2022, photographs of drone wreckage in Ukraine began circulating online. The drone carried Russian markings. It was called the Jiran 2, but analysts immediately identified it as Iran's Shahed 136. The distinctive delta wing design was unmistakable. Iran denied it. Russia denied it. Ukraine cut diplomatic ties with Tehran. Then came the scale. Within weeks, Russia was launching these drones against Ukrainian power infrastructure in mass waves, targeting electricity substations, heating systems, water facilities. Not military targets. Civilian infrastructure in winter. But the more consequential transfer was not the drones themselves. Iran provided Russia with engineering documentation and production tooling. Within months, Russia had established domestic manufacturing at a special economic zone in Tatarstan under the Jiran branding. Analysts estimate Russia is now producing tens of thousands of units annually. Iran had not just sold a weapon. It had exported a production line. The drone that first appeared over Kyiv in 2022 and the drone striking Gulf infrastructure in 2026 are related in name and concept, but they are not the same. Iran has been iterating continuously and largely in plain sight. The original Shahed 136 carried a 40-kilogram warhead. A subsequent variant increased that to 90. A stealth variant emerged with a matte black finish, optimized for night operations with a reduced radar cross-section. It's harder to spot, track, and intercept in the dark. Early Shaheds were purely GPS dependent, meaning they could be jammed. New variants incorporate inertial navigation systems that function even when GPS signals are disrupted. Some confirmed examples recovered in Ukraine carried Starlink terminal components using commercial satellite internet to maintain navigation. And then there's the Shahed 238, where the 136 uses a piston engine and flies at 180 kilometers per hour. The 238 is jet-powered, capable of speeds approaching 600 kilometers per hour. That is a drone built not just to destroy a target, but to suppress the air defense systems trying to stop it. In October 2022, Ukrainian engineers recovered a largely intact Shahed 136 and conducted a full analysis. Of 52 components examined, 40 were manufactured by 13 different American companies. Texas Instruments alone supplied nearly 24 parts. The remaining components came from Canada, Switzerland, Japan, Taiwan, and China. These are not military-grade parts smuggled through covert networks. They are commercial components, the kind found in consumer electronics and household devices, available on the open market and poorly regulated for dual-use purposes. Components reach Iran via intermediary states, including Turkey, India, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Vietnam, and Costa Rica, using shell companies and re-export arrangements exploiting gaps in export control enforcement. As Western pressure on Russian supply chains increased, the component sourcing shifted. By 2024, Chinese parts had grown to represent roughly 60% of the electronics recovered from drones in Ukraine. But Western components, including German transistors manufactured by Infineon, routed through opaque supply chains, continue to appear in recovered wreckage. The sanctions exist, the enforcement does not. And there is one further detail worth noting. When Iran first sold Shahed drones to Russia, leaked procurement documents indicated a unit price of approximately $193,000, 4 times the manufacturing cost. Iran was war profiteering on its own weapon. Russia moved to establish domestic production specifically to reduce that dependency. It drove costs down to $48,000 before capability upgrades pushed it back up towards $80,000. Even at $80,000, the cost of a fully loaded Range Rover Sport, the arithmetic remains deeply unfavorable for those trying to stop it. In April 2024, Iran launched a direct attack on Israel. Among the nations that helped intercept them was the United Kingdom. Royal Air Force jets deployed ASRAAM missiles to destroy incoming Shaheds. Each ASRAAM costs approximately $225,000 to shoot down a drone that cost at most $80,000 to build. France faced the same calculation against Houthi drone attacks in the Red Sea, deploying Aster missiles costing over €1 million per intercept. American Patriot systems, the gold standard of air defense, cost between $4 and $6 million per intercept. This is not a military problem, it is a mathematical one. The attacking side can sustain losses indefinitely. The defending side is moving towards economic collapse each time it fires a missile. Iranian drone attacks have struck oil and gas infrastructure, port facilities, and petrochemical sites across Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, and Qatar. Operations at multiple facilities have been suspended. Insurance for shipping in the region has become, in most cases, unavailable. But the infrastructure attack with the most alarming long-term implications is one that Iran has so far held in reserve. Water. Over 400 desalination plants line the Persian Gulf, in the UAE and Kuwait. In Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, strategic water reserves could be depleted within days if major desalination capacity were destroyed. Iran has struck at least one desalination facility in Bahrain. Analysts assessing Iranian strategy believe the current approach, hitting energy and port infrastructure to impose economic costs, is being pursued while desalination attacks are held in reserve as a more escalatory option. The threat has not yet been fully deployed. That is the point. Iran does not need to destroy Gulf water infrastructure to exert leverage. It needs only to demonstrate that it can. Most coverage of drone attacks focus on their raw destructive power. The wider financial consequences receive less attention. The petrodollar system, under which Gulf oil is sold in US dollars, with those dollars recycled back into American assets, is one of the structural pillars of US economic dominance. This funds US government borrowing at lower costs and sustains demand for US equities. Gulf sovereign wealth funds, the Saudi PIF, Abu Dhabi's ADIA, Qatar's QIA, collectively manage over $2 trillion in global assets. Think of them like property developers who own 10 buildings but with little cash in the bank. When the oil income stops, they can't sell a building overnight, so they raid whatever cash they have available. For Gulf sovereign wealth funds, that cash equivalent is their holdings in US stocks and government bonds. When oil revenues dry up, that is what gets sold, and Wall Street and the wider world sits up and pays attention. This is happening against a backdrop in which the dollar's share of global reserves has already declined from 71% to 56% since 2008, and Gulf states are already reassessing their dependence on the dollar system, as is China. Every week of disruption is another week of pressure on sovereign wealth fund liquidity, another week of the petrodollar recycling mechanism under strain. A drone assembled from off-the-shelf electronics, powered by a piston engine, guided by commercial GPS technology, launched from a truck. It was refined and tested in Ukraine, deployed across the Middle East, and according to the FBI is now a concern on American soil itself. The $30,000 question is this: how do you build a defense against something that costs less than defending against it? Nobody has a convincing answer yet. Thanks for watching. That was Distilled by Dave. If you enjoyed it, hit like, drop a comment and subscribe. I'll see you soon.